Beth, you taking over?
Sure. Melissa, if you could go ahead and show the slide for Bex, she'll introduce the next session.
Yeah, so thanks everybody. This sort of ends our like purely science agenda for the Gage Sage Science Workshop. But we thought we'd end on maybe what I hope is an inspirational note looking forward. So Gage and Sage both benefit from innovative partnerships that let us sort of punch above our weight, right? We can do a lot more than just the scope of Gage and Sage by working with lots of different partners at lots of different scales to be innovative and explore new areas of science support. So we asked a few of our key stakeholders and partners to round out the end of the science workshop by sharing with us their vision for the future of geophysics partnerships. So there'll be a couple of short talks, and then we can finish with hopefully a wide-ranging discussion of what the future might hold for us. So there are 4 speakers representing the USGS, the National Geodetic Survey, the URGE project, which is Unlearning Racism in Geosciences, and then Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I'll introduce each speaker individually. We'll, as usual, play the little video. And then I believe all of these speakers have actually made themselves available for Q&A and a panel discussion at the end. So thanks to all of you for coming. I know this isn't necessarily squarely in your wheelhouse as you manage big other entities, research entities. So thanks again for coming. And first up is Gavin Hayes. He's the Senior Science Advisor for Earthquake and Geologic Hazards for the USGS.
And we don't actually have videos, so people are speaking.
So people are actually live. Wow. Okay. Wow. And, then I'll introduce Gavin in real life on Zoom to give the USGS perspective on a vision for future partnerships.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks, Bex. My heart about stopped in my throat when you said that I had a video because well, I don't.
Sorry, everybody.
But hi, everyone. My name's Gavin Hayes. I'm the Senior Science Advisor for Earthquake and Geologic Hazards with the USGS. In that role, I coordinate the Earthquake Hazards, Global Seismographic Network, and Geomagnetism programs. And with 3 other of our hazards programs, volcano, landslides, and coastal marine, these programs sit within the Natural Hazards Mission Area of the USGS. The mission area also leads USGS work in risk reduction and in emergency management and response activities. And across the work in that natural hazards mission area, our focus is to enhance observations, improve understanding of hazards and impacts, improve assessment of products and services, and provide effective situational awareness of natural hazards events. A lot of the same things that the people in the Sage Engage groups are working on. So all the new opportunities for now and the future are really viewed through that lens for us. I've been asked to comment about partnerships with geophysics facilities and a vision for the future. And I've been asked to keep my remarks to 5 minutes. So I'll do what I can in just the next few minutes. The first thing I really wanted to talk about was the Global Seismographic Network. The USGS supports about 2/3 of the GSN currently. The NSF through IRIS supports the rest. The GSN is an excellent example of a partnership that's really beneficial for both the USGS and for all of our partners for both applied and fundamental research activities. And we, of course, want to see that partnership continue into the future. With congressional funding over the past several years, USGS has continued to work on upgrading aging sensors in the GSN. We're committed to completing upgrades to borehole sensors once we're able to travel again. And once those upgrades are complete, we hope to be able to seek support to replace the aging vault sensors as well. The USGS's main geophysics facility is the Advanced National Seismic System, which coordinates earthquake monitoring operations across the US via the National Earthquake Information Center and both USGS and partner regional seismic networks. And one of the most recent additions to the ANSS has been the West Coast Shake Alert Earthquake Early Warning System, which saw the significant milestone earlier this year of completing rollout of testing of public alerting to cell phones in all 3 West Coast states. So if you live in California, Oregon, or Washington, hopefully you're signed up either via apps or via via emergency alerts to get those. Completing seismic station build out for this system and determining future avenues for earthquake early warning will be a significant focus for us in the coming years. There's overlap in interest between ANSS and the geophysical facility. For example, both use portable instruments and hazard response. There's overlap in many avenues of research and operations between the work we do and the work that the Gauge and SAGE communities do in machine learning, in high performance computing, and in the cloud, to name just a few of the things we've heard about today. And there are many other important areas of overlap as well. And USGS is very interested in working with a future geophysical facility that can strongly support NSF experiments in these areas of mutual interest. Looking forward in general, a recent focus within our monitoring mission has been to work to merge real-time geodesy into real-time seismic data, for which, of course, there are a variety of applications, both in traditional monitoring and in earthquake early warning. We're also working on more systematic use of satellite data and terrestrial remote sensing into our various activities. We've been extremely excited to see the progress of the HZ4D community and the progress that group has made. Opportunities for overlap here are obviously very clear, and we can leverage resources both at the USGS, NSF, and at other science agencies, as well as those across the academic community. The 2022 federal budget process is well underway, and both the President's and House budgets include significant increases in investment in the USGS for subduction zone science. And we hope this will allow us to expand some key activities like seafloor geodesy and lacustrine paleoseismology. Internally, we've been in the process of improving our coordination and organization of subduction zone science related efforts. We've established a small community of scientists across all of our hazards programs that will help coordinate these activities and interface with some of the external community groups and keep our mission area management up to speed with relevant efforts. Our latest effort here is supporting wave glider deployments in the Aleutian Arc after recent earthquakes in the Shimogan region to resample GPSA monuments that were established during the Alaska Amphibious Community Seismic Experiment. Data gathered there should provide some great insights into last year's events, and we hope to be able to support an upcoming effort to gather similar data after the recent magnitude 8.2 earthquake. In the volcano hazards program, VHP have recently been authorized by Congress to establish a national volcano early warning system, NVUs, but that program's yet to receive any specific appropriation for NVUs activities. Volcano hazards do have a NVU's 5-year management plan that describes how existing monitoring networks will be augmented and where new networks will be needed to be established on under instrumented volcanoes. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go find that report. And within the landslide hazards program, we know that large rapid landslides into fjord waters in mountainous and coastal Alaska have generated some of the largest tsunami run-ups on record. And the USGS is now working with state and federal partners to evaluate the behavior and hazards posed by a large active landslide at the end of the retreating Barry Arm Glacier in Prince William Sound. Remote sensing efforts are focused there on use of satellite and aerial imagery to obtain movement history to inform a monitoring hazard assessment strategy. And this summer, USGS and partners have been completing a multi-week field campaign to install seismic instruments, establish a temporary terrestrial radar monitoring and collect field data in that region. And a preliminary assessment of the wave generated potential of that landslide was released last month as a USGS open file report. That I'll finish just by saying that kind of work is an example of efforts we expect to expand under the current administration and into the future, that of overlap between climate and hazards, work that's most dominant in our landslide and coastal marine programs, and the overlapping risk project. And we hope to see budget increases in these areas both in the upcoming years, and that work will likely be a significant focus for those programs in years ahead. So with that, Bex, I'll hand it back to you. I think I've taken up my allotted time, and I look forward to any questions that people have. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, that's all super exciting. I think we probably have time for a quick question, or we could, and unless someone throws one into the chat window on Pathable, I will roll onward to our next speaker. Okay. So next up is Juliana Blackwell. Juliana is the director of the National Geodetic Survey, which is a critical piece of NOAA.
Good afternoon. I'm hoping that you can hear me and see me okay.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you on the importance of partnerships and collaboration. Let me start out by saying that without the level of data sharing and engagement that we have with our partners currently, the National Geodetic Survey would not be able to accomplish our primary mission to define, maintain, and provide access to the National Spatial Reference System, or NSRS for short, as we do today. But looking ahead to the needs and the uncertainties of what the future holds, NGS recognizes the value and the critical importance of expanding collaboration across the many sectors of the geophysics community. So only by working together can we build an observing network for our nation that's greater than the sum of all of its parts. So I know you all understand that and know that deeply. But I'd like to share with you some of the things that we are currently doing and are looking forward to doing with partnership and innovative ways of bringing our data and our processes together. First of all, well, one area of opportunity for us is our NOAA CORS network. It's a long-standing partnership model, which is comprised of more than 1,800 GNSS stations and 200 partners. We're in the process of developing an NGS CORS comprehensive plan to fundamentally change the way we run the network in the future. The plan will set new requirements and recommendations for partners. It'll outline new metrics to tier stations into different levels of service. It'll present strategies to increase data management efficiency and harmonize the network development efforts with our NSRS modernization requirements. We're looking forward to input and participation by members of the geophysics community and the review of our draft comprehensive plan once it's available, which we hope it will be sometime early next year for review and comment. Also, as part of our modernization of the NSRS, NGS is working with other federal partners to secure a federally operated geodetic backbone of highly stable cores, which we're calling foundation cores. Ideally, this is a network of 36 stations. Currently, we have about 26 that we're receiving data from. Included in the Foundation Cores network are 10 NASA GNSS network stations, and we're also currently working with NGA to collaboratively install new Foundation Cores monumentation and equipment at 10 VLBA stations in the US. These collaborations are formalized through cooperative MOUs. These are just a few examples of how we're working together to achieve goals we would not be able to achieve individually. Another area NGS is beginning to investigate, and I've heard this mentioned a few times, is machine learning and AI, hopefully to expedite and automate our CORS position analysis. This would allow faster identification of position offsets and other quality control issues in our CORS network data. A modernized method of analysis would enable us to provide NSRS coordinates to stations that are not officially part of our network, but would benefit from being aligned to it, such as GNSS stations at tide and river gauges, RTN network base stations, and ground motion monitoring stations. We're also expanding our GPS orbital modeling into GNSS processing capabilities and working toward providing the GNSS orbits, RhinoX3 observational products, and our new MPages software to the IGS and to the public and to other communities. It's my hope that in the near future, NASA, USGS, and NGS will be able to collaborate on ground motion modeling, especially from INSAR, and that through a future interframe velocity model, we'll be able to represent motions not captured by simple plate motion models. Our vision for a new IFVM will replace our current geophysical modeling approach using HTTP and soon Trans 4D. This will include utilizing our NOAA cores network to provide calibration, validation measurements for INSAR through the installation of reflectors at our foundation cores, which is a totally new area of operation and analysis for us. So we definitely need some more help and partnership there to help us see how to accomplish that in the near future. And lastly, I'll just mention a few of our international collaborations, because what we do here nationally all fits internationally. Focusing mostly on our neighbors, I'll just mention that our modernized NSRS will be based on a densified ITRF, likely ITRF 2020, which will be consistent with Surgas reference frame that's used throughout the Americas. We focus on making sure we have a close collaboration with Canada and are developing a consistent vertical or geopotential datum with them, and possibly a geometric reference frame. We're also working with Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean to develop a reference frame for their region. We are working with Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Island countries and territories to ensure that the Pacific reference frames are consistent with those being developed for the Asia Pacific region. So I know there's a lot thrown out there, and hopefully just under 5 minutes, not too far over. But to close, there are just a few of the plans that we have underway to help advance our science and our partnerships. And I look forward to hearing from others on how we can further connect our physical and our professional networks and share our innovative methods of processing, analyzing, and modeling. So thank you very much for asking me to be a part of this panel today.
Thank you so much. This is all so much exciting new stuff to think about. And I think the community represented in this workshop will be really excited about getting into the weeds with both the USGS and the NGS initiatives. Any quick questions? We'll see if I can juggle the chat. Not. Okay, so our next speaker is Casey Adderhold. Casey is on the staff of IRIS, but she's also, for the purposes of this discussion, the PI of the URGE project, which is an initiative to help us all think a little more deliberately about our biases within the geosciences. So, Casey?
Thank you very much, Bex, and I'm very glad to be invited here. I am actually not a PI on the project for URGE. This is led by Vashon Wright and Gabriel Duran, but I am an URGE leadership team member, so just want to make sure that's clear. But I'm really happy to be included in this session on partnerships. I think as we've realized, there's a lot of value in working together on issues in our community, and particularly the future of our community. So I wanted to note that these recent groundswell events that have happened in society, things like Black Lives Matter, protests, and other initiatives across our country have also began impacting our sciences and our academic lives as well. And so this has been a trend in the recent year, and more beyond that as well. So when this started getting into the geosciences, if I can advance my slide there were several calls that were led by these efforts were led by Black, Indigenous, and other geoscientists of color in our community. And I've highlighted two of those calls here, the call for a robust anti-racism plan for the geosciences, and a call to action for an anti-racist science community from geoscientists of color, Listen, Act, Lead. And the websites are available there, so you can go and sign the petition if you haven't already, along with the other 26,000 folks who have, and or sign on to the call to action. And these are efforts aimed at creating a community that's more supportive, more inclusive, safer, and more diverse in the geosciences. This is also very much relevant, as a recent paper has shown that there has been no progress on diversity in the geosciences in the past 40 years. And so clearly the efforts that have been done so far, the actions that have been taken so far, have not had the impact that has been desired. And so this is really trying to get at what is it in our field that is preventing people from feeling safe and included in the science. So then in spring of 2021, the URGE project was launched, and this is Unlearning Racism in Geoscience. It was, as I said before, led by Vashon Wright and Gabriel Duran, and later they brought in a larger leadership team, including myself. This project is supported by funding from the National Science Foundation, and it includes a lot of social scientists as speakers and social science concepts in both the development of the program and the curriculum, but also in the analyzing of the impact of this program that we're undertaking now. So this grassroots effort was not meant to attract quite the amount of participation. We ended up having to expand and rethink how to do this, because we ended up supporting over 3,000 participants in the program, which included hundreds of pods, which are small groups of participants that are centered around a university, a department, a laboratory, agency, company, or other organization or combination of organizations. So coordinating those thousands of participants and hundreds of pods was quite the effort. And so we ended up, well, of course, we appreciated the level of participation, but it was quite the undertaking. URGE ended up leading these participants through 8 two-week sessions with peer-reviewed literature readings, interviews, inclusivity tips, and also deliverables, which were draft policies and resources for organizations. We also included additional listening sessions for Black, Indigenous, and other URGE participants of color that would help focus and guide those development of policies and resources in the pods. The results are ongoing for working with both the URGE pods that we have existing and the future of URGE, but we have encouraging examples from large university megapods where there were just many participants. They had to divide up into smaller groups. USGS that had 7 pods and support from on high in the organization or in the agency in order to support that participation, as well as multi-organizational pods like the 2-year colleges pod and the IRIS UNAVCO Plus URGE pod. There are, of course, many opportunities for collaboration outside of just URGE, and we at URGE and of course at IRIS and UNAVCO support the collaboration of and partnering with organizations that have been working on these issues for a long time. So better coordination amongst ourselves can improve the centering of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and their priorities, while also reducing the burden on those individuals for speaking out. So working with and supporting the ongoing efforts of groups like Geo-Latinas, National Association of Black Geologists and Geophysicists, Geoscience Alliance, and Asian American and Pacific Islanders in Geosciences can really move the needle on this. And of course, there are many others to work with on this. And so I just want to note that efforts that have gone into like intentional centering of this work and valuing this work have I think began our move to progress in this. For instance, the SSA task force on diversity, equity, inclusion, which has a report out. There's a recent paper out on editorial boards and trying to diversify those and sharing the resources and policies that can go into that and have been effective in that. And of course, the URGE pods are this network that can propagate these policies and resources across our field quite efficiently. And I think that that will be a key aspect for creating change, positive change in our field. And so I'll just wrap up with that IRIS and UNAVCO and the combined IRIS UNAVCO URGE pods are ready to help facilitate, lead, and collaborate with our community. So we look forward to those partnerships. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. It'll be exciting to see what happens next with URGE. Great. So one last speaker to share a vision of collaborations and partnerships as we move forward. I'd like to introduce Bill Walter. He's the Geophysical Monitoring Programs leader at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me and see me.
Yep.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to share a few thoughts about the future of partnerships in geophysics. I'm here. My name is Bill Walter. I do lead this group at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, but I probably should shout out to our collaborator laboratories at Los Alamos, Sandia, and Pacific Northwest Nuclear, as well as people that work in geophysical monitoring in the Air Force and DITRA. So it's kind of a broad group that does that. Let's go to the next slide, please. And this application of geophysics for detecting nuclear tests, which is the kind of work that we do, sort of naturally brings together a lot of interdisciplinary and international partnerships. And it's an interesting problem. Although nuclear tests have really gotten to be more rare, which is a good thing. In fact, only one country has declared nuclear tests in this century. And the last one by North Korea was in September of 2017, so almost 4 years ago. Assuring ourselves that all the signals that we see and all the things that we're looking at are not nuclear tests is actually a bit of a challenging problem, because there's all sorts of things going on in the Earth all the time, not just earthquakes and volcanoes and landslides, but man-made things like mine collapses and accidental explosions and mine blasts and all kinds of things to worry about. And because this focus of this effort has been on nuclear tests, and nuclear tests have been underground for the past 40 years, geophysical techniques really are the most robust techniques and are at the forefront of what gets used for doing these things. And that really brings in a lot of seismoacoustic and ground displacement techniques like INSAR. Let's go to the next slide. So, there's a lot of ways and places to look for these kind of signals. This is kind of a seismic spectrum or really a spectrum of Earth displacement. And really, I wish I'd made this figure some years ago, but it'd be nice to make it even bigger, go up to higher frequencies and down to longer periods. But there's a lot of room in here to look at signals. And even with broadband technologies, we still tend to look within sort of small bands at what we can see and what we can understand. And most geophysical signals are really very broadband. And there's a lot of things in this spectrum to look at and look for, not just earthquakes and explosions, but like we've been talking about for the past 3 days. There's landslides and mine collapses and all kinds of things in there. And the background noise itself is really fascinating. There's been a lot of work on how that gets generated and where it's caused and how it varies in time and how we can use it to get at Earth structure. So there's a lot of room to do a lot of things here. Let's go to the next slide. Please, next. Thank you. And this point has been brought up too. Sensors are getting more numerous, and we're getting more dense samples of wave fields and more kinds of techniques. Obviously, cell phones and MEMS technologies and smart meters and your electric system and all kinds of things are densifying data where people live. Fiber optics is really an amazing technique. This is a plot from a borehole with a downhole explosion where we're trying to understand how shear waves are generated. On the right, you see some INSAR. There's many of these. I just picked one of the INSAR signals of the 2017 nuclear test in North Korea. So there's lots and lots of things that are giving us more data, better sampling data. And all that leads to the data problems that have been the focus of a number of talks, including 2 really excellent talks by Eileen Morton and Maureen Denol that just happened. And let's go to the next slide. So here's just one example of, if you have a lot of data, what can you do? And there's a lot of things one could do. I just pull out my favorite example. I'm always asking our colleagues, how do we cross-correlate everything? And we tried to do this on a very large data set a few years back, 310 million waveforms, 40-day run on a massive computer system back This is five years ago. But the good news, and this is not really new, lots of people have shown this, is if you have good time bandwidth product, which you tend to have for either larger events or closer in recordings, especially less than 10 degrees, there's a lot of correlation between those signals. And imagine if you had that information in your database when you're going to do your analysis or any sort of massive processing. So it's part of your data. It's part of what you can do for your analysis. That's really the direction we want to be able to go. And we want to be able to do these kinds of large scale processing. And exactly the point that was made in a couple of the previous talks about data movement being the problem and having the data and the computational capabilities co-located is really important and something I hope we're going to be moving toward as we move into the future. So next slide. So that kind of brings me to my last slide. There's a lot of partnerships that are possible. Again, I think in the explosion monitoring community, we're used to these kinds of partnerships. There has to be a lot of international collaboration. There has to be a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration to make that work. And I think as we've been talking about in this meeting, trying to get partnerships between scientists and some sort of idealized cloud infrastructure of QC curated data, that would be my dream to see that happen, would be great. But there's lots and lots of other partnerships we could look at, observationalists and theoretical modelers, institutions and professional societies, government, international agencies, private industry and NGOs. And I think the challenge for us is these are all good and they're all valuable things, but they take time and effort. And so if we think about how to prioritize them, we have to think about what we're trying to accomplish. And I think what we want to try to accomplish is at the bottom there. It's to create diverse teams to solve important problems. So I hold up geophysical monitoring for nuclear explosions as one of those, but there's many, many other good ones, obviously. Hazard mitigation, resource management, climate change. You can rattle them off. But that's what we want to think about as we think about partnerships, is what kind of problem are we trying to solve and what team do we need to assemble to do that? And how do we enable that to happen? So with that, thank you for your time and open up to comments and questions.
Great, thank you so much. So for all of our speakers who just talked about partnerships in this last session, there's one question, Bill, for you from Victor Sai. He's asking a big question. Yes, for partnerships, but I agree they are hard. They require both sides to understand each other to a degree. Any thoughts on how to accomplish that?
Yeah, that's hard, right? I think that is the hardest thing in science, is actually getting two partners to agree on how to work together, and it almost requires physically sitting down together and understanding each other's issues and each other's infrastructures and each other's challenges to do that. So it's hard. I think the biggest thing is you need a committed person on each side of the partnership and some time and money. That's the most key thing you need.
So for the earlier career folks in our audience, or people who have just had a fantastic idea of how they could collaborate with one of you representing other agencies, what's the pathway to forming useful relationships? Like, how do people find out about what your needs are or what you have to offer? Where do you go?
I can start. I mean, one way is just to reach out to us. We have a whole host of scientists that are willing to work with anyone from the community. We also have great opportunities in student internships. We try to bring in many student interns at our various science centers throughout the summer, and for those science centers that are kind of co-hosted with universities, those students can stay on throughout the year as well. And I think that's a great way of getting early career scientists into the system. And we of course need to diversify who we're reaching out to for those internship opportunities, and how we can retain those kinds of skill sets within our group. And I'm sure the same applies to others as well.
Yeah, I'll second that. For the national labs, we run summer programs. We have summer students in each summer. They can be undergrads, they can be graduates, they can be between grad school and undergrad. It's a great way to get involved. I actually did it myself many, many years ago. It's a good thing. But also there's all sorts of opportunities that can be found just by reaching out and talking to folks. There's lots of partnerships that are possible.
May I just chime in and say, I think a number of the beginnings of partnerships that we've established have really come from in-person, just ad hoc discussions that have blossomed into, follow-ups and additional meetings and somebody sparking the idea. So I think the encouraging thing is you just never know where things are going to lead. So whether it's through conferences or professional societies or a friend of a friend, whatever it is, if you have an idea, if there's something that you think we could really do together, reach out, take that first step, because you just never know where it's going to lead. And I think that, and I think back to some of the initiatives that we have, it really just started with somebody having an idea and just being persistent about making sure that they found a person to talk to about it and evolve how that collaboration could work. So yeah, I think anything can work, but I think a lot of times it's that personal connection to get things started.
Yeah, I would just chime in and say, I think one of the biggest lessons that the discussions of the URGE pod that I've been privy to is sometimes there's a perception that you have to already know someone to reach out to them, or you have to have some kind of a connection, like it's your brother's cousin's girlfriend, whatever. That's not so true. Like, be brave. Every single person sitting on this meeting and even our extended community, we all have a say in what science gets done and what partnerships get made. So don't be afraid to just randomly email someone if you have a great idea, or randomly email everyone if you have a great idea. I know there's some questions about the future of URGE. There's also one person, Megan Flanagan, who's had her hand raised for a while. So Megan, if you want to unmute and ask your question, then we can circle around to URGE.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my question is for, I guess, Bill Walter. Hi, Bill. I was in the course report, they do encourage interagency partnership and cooperation. And as you know, with NSF and the USGS cooperating on the GSN and also on SCEC, have you considered the possibility of NSF collaborating with the national labs on the topic of global tomography? Because it seems that the direction you're going with, Nathan Simmons and Steve Myers and colleagues, is full waveform inversion. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from all the universities, is everyone wants to go full waveform inversion. And the labs have this high performance computing resources to do it. So it seems like a natural collaboration coming up in the future. Have you talked with NSF about that?
I totally agree with you. And it's a little frustrating because there's some bureaucratic challenges. Our group is in one part of DOE that does the nuclear monitoring. The high performance computing is in the Office of Science, which is a different part. There's a little bit of complexity to get those two sides to touch each other and do that. But this is something that we raise all the time, and we try to reach out and work with partners in academia and industry, for that matter, on these kinds of problems. But if anybody has any insight into how to get more communication between DOE and NSF, I would be all ears. We would love to see that happen.
All right. Casey, can you comment a little bit about the next steps for URGE? And then we'll probably have to wrap this with maybe one last question.
Yes, I'd be happy to. And so I know that URGE participants are probably eagerly awaiting what our plans are for the future. And the leadership team is trying to be very intentional about the next steps we take and using a lot of information, trying to decide on key aspects to prioritize. And that will be also driven by those Black, Indigenous, and people of color listening sessions. And so please stay tuned. Those announcements will come out, but we do have a GSA session. We also have an AGU session, and the abstract deadline has been extended to August 25th. So you still have an opportunity to submit abstracts to that session. And so I look forward to those conference sessions and hearing more from other pods and other organizations. And then on partnerships, I just wanted to add too that we're trying to understand what about URGE made it successful in attracting such a large participation. So those results will be reported at a later time, but hopefully that can also help guide future partnerships.
Thank you. I think there's one last hand raised. So Jose, do you want to ask your question? I think you're unmuted, so hopefully you can go ahead and ask. Okay, so maybe if it's not working, you would type your question into the chat on the Pathable portal, because I know that this in the last 4 minutes of the Gauge Stage Science Workshop, people are probably have their eyes on the clock. I just want to say thank you all for an incredible workshop. I know it's not that easy to be on Zoom for approximately 1 million hours a day. And I'm completely inspired by all of the amazing science that was presented and all of the complete generosity that people have exhibited throughout these 3 days with their ideas and their thoughts and their perspectives. It makes me really optimistic for an exciting future for the geophysics facilities and for an expansive understanding of the partnerships we can use to make scientific discoveries that benefit human communities. So thank you all for participating. Thanks for your hard work, organizers and conveners and session moderators and speakers. I want to hand over now to my best buddy in all things geophysics, which is Bob. Yeah, do you have, sorry. Oh yes, I'm sorry. And we're not quite done actually. There's one more session to the science workshop tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. There's a second special session for our international partners. It's an international panel sharing effective practices for infrastructure, training, and collaboration. And the reason I'll be getting up at 4:45 to put a hat on and join the session is because that time is optimized for our partners in Asia and Africa. So please do participate in that session, share your wisdom about effective collaborations, or come meet people who are interested in international partnerships. And now I'll hand off to Bob Woodward to give his closing remarks and remind you about next year's science workshop.
Yeah, thank you, Bex. So I just want to second Bex's comments, thanking the participants, both in this session, fantastic set of talks, and really enjoyed hearing your visions for the future of our field. And the thank you to the speakers and presenters all week. It was really inspiring to see and hear about all the great work everyone's doing. And I really love the way different themes kept coming up in different talks at different parts of the week. It was just, that was really great. And maybe some of that wasn't an accident. So I want to say thank you to the organizing committee. Really a clever and inspired set of subjects and themes that you've assembled for us this week. And you really carefully juxtaposed topics that stimulated discussion and engagement across disciplinary boundaries and different intersections. And so that was really great to see. So thank you, organizing committee. And I want to give a huge shout out to the UNAVCO team. I think they did a superb job this week. They took the lead in organizing this workshop really just a superb effort. Just all of the sessions went off without a hitch. And I can't even begin to mention the names of all the people that were involved at UNAVCO and a few IRIS staff as well. But I do want to put a special shout out to Beth Pratt-Satula and Melissa Weber, who really seem to have mastered the ability to be in multiple places at one time. I thought I saw them in every single session. Just amazing. And they solved every problem that came up. So thank you both so much. And thank you to the entire UNAVCO and IRIS staff team that was behind them, helping with all the sessions. So looking ahead, let's look ahead to next year. So IRIS gets the task of leading the organization of the workshop next year. We hope that we will see you all face to face, finally. That will be such a treat. And we are looking forward to a workshop next June, mid-June in Pittsburgh. And so watch your email for more details. We'll get a save the date email message out to all of you for mid-June next year in Pittsburgh. So we're really looking forward to that. And with that, yes, I'll just say that the workshop's not over. So those of you in the North American time zone, brew up some coffee and join us early next morning for a discussion with our Asian and African colleagues about international sharing and international practices. So that's my comments from IRIS, and I'll turn it back over to Bex.
Okay, see you tomorrow morning. And Beth just posted in the chat that the recordings of almost all of these sessions will be available for a year. So until next summer. So have a look if you missed sessions. It was hard to be everywhere all at once if you're not Beth or Melissa. So if you missed anything, please track those down. There are a couple sessions that aren't going to be posted because some of the material was a little more sensitive, but most things will be available. And thank you all for coming.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.